So our last input or observation or contribution from the panel is from Mary Frances Rochford. Mary Frances is the Programme Manager in the EPA of our climate change programme, and within her responsibilities she looks after our national greenhouse gas emission inventories and projections, which we published today, the National Dialogue on Climate Action, Climate Adaptation, including the Climate Ireland that Rob highlighted there as being quite innovative, climate science and international climate engagement. And she's going to talk to us about a nice project that we have underway with Yale University related to climate change in the Irish mind. So over to you, Mary Frances.
Thanks very much, Emer, and thanks to my fellow speakers on this session. And I feel that coming to the discussion at this point, really I'm quite humbled, because what we were embarking on to understand is actually what's been put in place, and really my panellists are practitioners of understanding climate change in the Irish mind. We, I think today, have very much heard about the importance of implementation, the importance of implementation at scale, at pace, and the importance of the degree of success. We're aiming high when it comes to climate change, adaptation and action here in Ireland. So the support of individuals, we've heard about it from our previous speakers, is really important. It underpins the success of what we're aiming for. We're seeking the support of individuals who are going about their daily lives, who are being asked through policies and plans to make very big, sometimes different, sometimes difficult choices about their lifestyles, their travel patterns, how they run their businesses, what they work at, what they do, how they run their homes, how they heat their homes, and what they consume. Therefore, there is a really clear need for effective communication and engagement with members of the public. Members of the public who are you and me, and we often forget that. There are parents, there are grandparents who we heard about. They are the people that we live with. And as policymakers, as people who work in the sector that is calling for climate action and working in the area of climate action, we have a responsibility to understand how the public, that's you, me, and the people I mentioned, think, engage, and consider where they're at when we come to this discussion. So last year, the EPA sought to understand climate change in the Irish mind. And this is the first nationally representative survey of the Irish public on climate change. We based this work on climate change in the American mind, and this is work that has been led out by and developed by the Yale Programme on Climate Change Communication and the George Mason University Centre for Climate Change Communications. This work is a groundbreaking methodology that has been used in the United States and around the world that allows comparison of findings over time and between countries. In the Irish case, we sought to tailor this survey to meet the particular socio-economic context of us here in Ireland. We commissioned research carried out by University College Cork to understand and review the literature on social, political, economic and cultural context for understanding Irish attitudes and behaviours to climate change. And care was taken as we developed a survey and questionnaire to ensure that our study was appropriate to the Irish context and that we used language in our engagement that was culturally relevant. The survey and this piece of work essentially aims to develop a better understanding of the Irish population's climate change beliefs, risk perceptions, policy preferences, and behaviour of the Irish public to climate change. We have three key outputs from this study. The first, the Climate Change in the Irish Mind report, which we published before Christmas, a segmentation report, and an online interactive map, which are coming shortly. As I said, this work was carried out with Yale, and it is also in support of the National Dialogue on Climate Action. So this time last year, we engaged with Behaviour and Attitudes, who on behalf surveyed 4,000 people to find out what those basic underlying attitudes to climate change were. And in the context of this session, it has given us a good sense of public support for the scale and pace of the transformation that we were discussing today. The top-level findings are quite reassuring. They tell us that Irish people are in almost full agreement that climate change is happening, and 85% are worried about it. 91% of people say that climate change is important to them personally, and 79% say that climate change should either be very high or a high priority for Government of Ireland. Irish people strongly support a wide range of policies to address climate change, and people think positively that climate change will increase jobs, economic growth, and quality of life. And when it comes to who people are trusting in terms of the sources of information, I was very heartened to see that scientists, experts, and the EPA are very trusted sources of information about climate change. The report and the study itself has 3 key areas. The first of which is around the climate change beliefs and attitudes. And within this section, we explore climate change beliefs, perceived risks of climate change, emotional responses to climate change, trusted sources of information, and personal and social engagement with climate change. What we found here was that 96% of Irish people think climate change is happening. And we often take that for granted in an Irish context, but when we compare it to international surveys similar to this, it's not always such a resounding appreciation and understanding. 88% of people say that climate change is affecting the weather in Ireland, and 85% are worried about climate change. 94%, as I said, trust scientists as a source of climate information, and 72% of people in Ireland say that they discuss climate change with family and friends. So all in all, we see that people are engaged with the subject, that they have high awareness and understanding, and that they are concerned. When it comes to climate policies, and we touched on this today, and many of us have mentioned the conversations that we heard on the radio this morning in terms of, are the public up for this? Is the political system up for this? In this section, we explored climate change as government priorities, support for policies to reduce greenhouse gases, climate change as an economic and quality of life issue, and responsibility for action on climate change. What we found was that 62% of people think taking action to reduce climate change will improve economic growth and create jobs. We also need to be mindful in this of the just transition that Padraig mentioned earlier. 79% of Irish people say that climate change should be either very high or high on government or high priority for the Government of Ireland. 76% say that taking action to reduce climate change will improve Ireland's quality of life. And people say that many sectors of Irish society should be doing more to address climate change. 90% say that Ireland has a responsibility to act on climate change and should do what it can to reduce its own greenhouse gas emissions. Irish people do not think that Ireland is too small to take action on climate change. The final section is in relation to climate-related behaviours, both political behaviours and consumption behaviours. And what we see here is that Irish people are expressing a willingness to take action themselves. We see that 69% of Irish people would donate more or volunteer time to organisations working on climate change. 55% said they would definitely or probably join a citizens' campaign to convince leaders in Ireland to take action to reduce climate change. 57% have bought goods or services in the last 12 months from a company that has taken action to reduce climate change. So people are indicating that they're ready to vote with their feet. We see that 52% would engage through writing letters, email, or phone government officials about climate change. And 45% of people said that they have punished companies in the last 12 months that are opposing steps to reduce climate change by not buying their products. I think this is giving us a very clear insight in relation to the public beliefs, attitudes, and perceptions in relation to climate action. I think from the conversations that we've heard today, that there's a willingness there and that people are very much expressing their support, and that I look forward to a meaningful engagement now and with the practitioners who use this information. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mary Frances. And we had Tony Lausewitz over from Yale University presenting these results a few weeks ago in Dublin, and he was really astounded by the results and the positive results that we're getting in Ireland. So, and yet, you know, a lot of good questions that night in terms of the public lecture. Why then do we find certain things so difficult? So perhaps we'll get into that as well today in the discussion. So